Alrighty. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Again, if this is the new, this is the first day of week 3 of the School to College series. Again, what's our virtual summer series this year, our third annual. Thank you again for joining us. If you've been part of the process so far, thanks again for joining us. If you're new, welcome. We're happy to have you, and thanks for taking the time to join us for today's session. Today is August 5th, and again, we'll get rolling here and get things started. We have a great presentation packed with some really great substance and material to talk with you about, and we have an amazing speaker joining us on today's panel. So let me jump right into it. Again, we're going through our schedule. So this is week 3, day 1 of week 3. So again, we'll be talking about self-care for a successful year. And again, we have 2 more sessions this week for Wednesday and Thursday, both at the same time from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Mountain Standard, for tomorrow and Thursday. Registration is still open. I'll provide the link in the chat as well, as we go throughout the presentation. So we'll keep an eye out for that. And again, feel free, if you're just joining, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. Include your name and tribe and where you're from, and even what college either you're going to or maybe you're currently looking at, because again, this is first year experience for everybody. A quick rundown again of our incentive prize giveaway. If you're able to attend 1 session, you'll be in the running for a gift card. For 2, for the Beats headphones. 3 is for the tablet. Of course, 4 is for our student laptop. Again, you have to be sure to stay for the whole session, and you want to complete the survey. So at the end of the presentation, I'll provide the survey link to everybody, and we would definitely appreciate all of your feedback and any other information or comments you want to provide us. So definitely feel free to complete those to get your name in the runnings for the following prizes provided here. So. And with that, today's session, we have a great presenter here for us. So if you guys, if any joined last year, I believe you joined last year as well. You're one of our presenters, Shoshaunee. So again, we're happy to welcome you back again this year. So Shoshaunee Perez is a descendant of the Tulalip and Tlingit and Haida peoples, and became an American Indian College Fund ambassador in 2019. She's an alumnus of Northwest Indian College. I see that we have some of those some of the students and scholars in the chat from that. So it's definitely a small community. So we're happy to have you guys part of the conversation. She's received her Bachelor of Arts in the Community Advocates in Responsive Education and Human Services, and her Associates of Arts and Services, in Sciences General Direct Transfer degree. She recently received her Master's of Education with a focus in adult education from Eastern Washington University in June of 23. She loves helping to support students and finding her own passions and goals. So again, we have some really insightful information in today's session, so we'll definitely get rolling with that here today.
All right, well, welcome everyone. As Sean mentioned, the session is called You First Self-Care for a Successful Year. I know that y'all introduced yourself, so we can kind of jump through the first questions. But the last question that I wanted to ask, because I always like to kind of make sure that as I'm talking about subjects, that I'm answering the questions that y'all have. So if there is a question or a thought that y'all want to drop in the chat, or that you're hoping to get answered by the end of this session, please feel free to do so. I'll keep an eye on it as well, just to make sure I answer those questions. So I'll go ahead and give it just a second if there's anything y'all want to drop in the chat before we get going here. I know everybody was introducing themselves. We've got people from the East Coast and Rhode Island to the Southwest to my area of the Pacific Northwest, which is awesome. So, all right. I'll introduce myself a little bit further as well. So my name is Shoshaunee Perez. I go by Sho just because it's easier to say and spell. I am a direct descendant of Tulalip and Tlingit and Haida on my mother's side. So Tulalip would be Coast Salish, and Tlingit and Haida is Alaskan Native on my mom's side. And as Sean mentioned, I did go to NWIC, Northwest Indian College, and then I graduated from Eastern with my master's degree. I have kind of been all over the board. I like to say I've had a really long and joyous journey in education, and it's definitely not done. I used to work for Northwest Indian College for many years as a first year experience advisor. I still currently teach as an adjunct faculty member for college for the college, primarily focusing on communications, computers classes, and I also get to teach a really cool class called Introduction to Successful Learning, where I get to talk about things like self-care. So I don't consider myself an expert in the field, as because we're always learning about that ourselves. But outside of working and going to school, I am a mom to a beautiful 5-year-old little girl named Brycelyn, and we're getting ready to start our journey into her education because she's getting ready to go to kindergarten for the first time this year. And then I'm a wife to my loving husband, Chris. If I'm not working or being a mom, I'm usually on the softball field, playing softball, watching my husband play softball. So it's a little bit about me. I'm also a really open book. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. I have a pretty non-traditional journey into education and completing my degrees and where I'm at now. And so I'm very happy to share that. So, all right. I don't think you thought you were going to come into a webinar and have a quiz, but I have one simple question for you, and that is to define self-care. So without Googling, without using AI or your Siri or anything along those lines, take a moment to put what you define or what you think self-care is into the chat. And I'll take a good look here at the chat. Doing things that make you happy. Thank you, Zayla. And don't be shy, there is no wrong answer. So what do you think self-care is? Self-care is being aware. Thank you, Celeste. Right. Well, thank you for those of you that shared. And I really appreciate that, because what I really like to see is that there's not one very specific definition of self-care, if you notice, right? There was being in the moment, there was being self-aware, there was taking care of yourself. And all of those are correct. So we'll take a look at the Webster's dictionary version, right, of self-care. So the definition is that self-care is the practice of taking action to preserve or improve one's own health. So if you notice, there's not very specific things to do. It's not X, Y, or Z. It's not a checklist of things to do. It's really just the ability to improve your own health. And it doesn't necessarily have to just be your mental health or your physical health. It can be your spiritual health, any of those different parts. It also encompasses, the big things to know is that it encompasses physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual, and that it's a continuous process. So what I like to tell people when we're talking about self-care, tell my students even, is self-care is not an end destination. You're not getting on a train or a plane and ending up in self-careville. You're always working on your self-care. And it's extremely important, especially as you're going into your first year with lots of changes, to keep self-care in mind and focus as well. So why is self-care important? I once heard a quote while I was kind of on my own journey of self-care, and I work in a helping services field. And so one of the quotes that I heard as I went to a conference was a supervisor told an employee, many of us don't practice self-care, we practice aftercare. And that could not be more true. I was like, no, I don't practice aftercare. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm always trying to take care of myself. I'm trying to do good things. And the definition that they used for aftercare was we take the moment to take care of ourselves after we have started feeling overwhelmed or burnt out. And so it's really important to remember self-care, and that self-care starts at the beginning and it's a continuous process. But why is self-care important? So it helps us to deal with challenges and disappointments. As you go into your first year of college, you're going to find that there's going to be a lot of ebbs and flows. And so being able to make sure that you're taking care of your own health, physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever that looks like, is going to be super important to help you deal with these ebbs and flows and these changes inside of your life. It improves your self-worth and self-esteem. It encourages confidence and resiliency. And I really want to connect to the word resiliency, because it doesn't mean that you are not having struggles. It means that you're able to bounce back from those struggles, or those experiences, again, those ebbs and flows in your journey. It allows us to accept our own mistakes, inspires gratitude towards ourselves. Practicing barriers can improve thriving. A lot of times we want to say yes to everything, and I am one of those people. I often, for a very long time, was saying yes to too many things and would find myself burnt out, because I wasn't practicing self care and I wasn't creating boundaries for myself as I was going through my journey. It nourishes your well-being and helps to manage stress. It allows yourself to breathe and engage in the world in a more meaningful and healthy way. Oops. That's what happens when we click on Zoom. So I think it's also important not to talk about the importance of self-care, but talk about the facts that we are seeing in Indian country today, that make self-care such an important topic to talk about. So it was reported in the Center for Health Statistics that 63% of Indigenous students in 2024 stated that their mental health impacted their ability to continue with their studies. So 63% of students were either potentially not passing classes or dropping out of school, because their mental health was not at the top tier. 1 in 4 students stated in 2024 stated that they experienced stigmas when accessing services, whether that was personal stigmas or it was stigmas within inside the system. That's an issue would be a total different topic for another time, but it's also important for us to be aware of, because that may mean that many students may not be going to access the services because of that stigma. 85% of students in 2024 said that there needed to be increased awareness and knowledge around mental health. And 88% of Indigenous staff at colleges across the country saw an increase in the number of students seeking mental health supports in 2024. I think it's also extremely important to note as well that we know that our medical systems, specifically our mental health systems, oftentimes can be tricky to get into, and they're a pretty overwhelmed system themselves. And oftentimes students don't know how to go and to access those systems. And so being able to create a network of support around you and yourself as well to help you practice that self-care and to help you practice those good habits early on is going to be paramount to your success in education and just in life in general. So, what are some things that happen if we don't practice self-care, right? Burnout. Burnout is obviously the number one thing at the top of the list. And burnout generally is depicted in things such as restlessness or oversleeping. Can also be things such as increased illness, also such as things as avoidance of those things that cause the burnout itself or that cause the stress. It is proven that lower academic performance happens when we are not practicing self-care, when we're experiencing higher levels of stress. And then you can get physical effects such as headaches, allergies, acne, muscle tension, and then particularly risks of cardiovascular disease, so heart disease, high blood pressure, and a risk of autoimmune disease. I really like to, it's not a fun example to use, but I do like to use this as an example. I had a previous coworker that was experiencing such high levels of stress and was not able to take care of themselves that they actually experienced high blood pressure for the first time in their life, and actually had to take time off of work in order to get their high blood pressure back in order, get it back down, to do status quo. And that was simply due to the high level of stress along with not doing the self-care. And so it's really common and it happens more often than we would think. And especially for us as Indigenous women as well, we know that cardiovascular disease runs higher in women than it does in men. So, what are some 3 golden rules of self-care? First is stick to the basics. You don't need to create this elaborate plan. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the things that you can do, but you don't need to do that. You don't need to have this elaborate plan for self-care. It's always too important to remember that self-care is an active choice. So it is something that you are actively choosing to do. It's not something that you're going to let just pass you by in order for you to kind of have that happen. And be aware of what you do, why you do it, how it feels, and what the outcomes are. And this is important for the continuous process that you are having as well. Because you may find things that work really well for you, or you may find things that don't work for you, or you may do things at specific times of the year based upon your ceremony schedule or different things along those lines. So it's important to kind of track how you're doing it and how it's making you feel. So self-care doesn't, so again, going back to those basics, self-care does not need to cost money. There's this really large conception, and I will say I had this really big belief when I started talking about self-care and looking into self-care, is I really thought self-care was like going to get my nails done or going on a shopping trip or, all of those things. And all of those things were costing money. And, when you would run out of money, or if you don't have, if you're not working with a consistent steady income, it can be hard to see that you need to do self care. And so as I started doing my own journey into self care, um, I really found these free forms of self care that not many other people talked about, but many of you mentioned, such as being aware, putting boundaries, being in the moment. All of those are free forms of self care that are aimed to help you to feel better. So, setting boundaries, not saying yes to everything, or if you have boundaries around ceremony or practices that you would like to do, making sure you do those. Just building time for yourself. Now, I know this is a lot easier said than done, especially if you're living in a dorm type situation, not getting time for yourself. But find a place or a time that you can do to have just a few moments of time for yourself on a consistent and habitual basis. A phone call or FaceTime home, going for a walk. Sean and I were talking about how we're not in the rainy season here in the Pacific Northwest, so it's a good time to go for a walk, get out, go in the mountains, go enjoy nature. Spiritual practices, making sleep a priority. I cannot stress this enough. Having been a college student myself and advising college students and teaching college students, staying up until 2 in the morning to do your homework is not a good self-care practice. I really want to encourage you to making sure that you're making sleep a priority, trying to get at least those 8 hours a night. Not only is it good for your self-care, but it's good for your body as well. It helps with processing foods. It also helps with turning short-term memory into long-term memory, giving your brain a break to heal. And so there's a lot of really good science that goes around making sure that you're giving yourself enough sleep and grace. Listening to music and podcasts, reading a book for fun, being creative. I oftentimes for myself will find just a moment of self-care in doing photography. Photography is just a habit that I picked up. It's just something that I love to do. I love to do sports photography. And so it's just fun. It gets me out of my head and gets me thinking about the creative side of things. So if for you that's beading or drawing, song and dance, all of those things are different forms of creative fashions to let yourself out. And it's also one of the other ones that I didn't put on here, but I kind of wanted to talk about with the quotes is positive affirmations or positive self-talk. So I encourage students and even myself to have positive quotes that you relate to or things that get you thinking around you at a consistent time. So putting them on your computer, putting them on the background of your phone, places that you get ready. Using those positive affirmations and those positive self-talk is a really great way to help continue to build up that resiliency and to also continue to build up that really great self-care as well. I also encourage you to have a daily battery check. A really good connection to self-care is our devices, right? So they have a battery, they're fully charged, they're ready to go. And then oftentimes we find ourselves right with our batteries depleting in our electronics, and what do? Right? We plug them in, we charge them. And so that same concept can be used for self-care. And so you can see this is just a poster from Etsy. and you can see the battery, and it gives you ideas. Gives you words for where you're at in terms of your self-care, where your battery is at, where your social battery is at, your emotional battery. We have different batteries. And then it also gives you some ideas. So for example, if you were feeling good, and that's where your battery was at, the question below that says, how can you maintain where you are now? So it gives you some reflection to think about whether it's to keep you in those good spaces where your battery is fully rested and recharged, or say struggle fest, which is triage, which is what area of your life is suffering the most right now, and thinking about taking that on as well. So I encourage you to think about that. Again, put it somewhere you can see it, access it, but doing a battery check, especially if you start to feel a little bit more in the depleted and the blah meh stage, it's important to kind of take a look at your battery. And I always hear college students, and I was one of these, I don't have the time. I'm managing going to a full load of classes. You may be working full-time or part-time. You may have additional responsibilities outside of school, cultural responsibilities, being a parent or a guardian to someone, being a friend, right? We have all of these additional responsibilities. And they always, students always say, I don't have a time. But here are things that only take 5 minutes. So you literally can set an alarm for 5 minutes that can help improve your self-care and help improve your mood. So first is to light a candle. Again, I do say that with caution, depending on what your dorm rules may be. If you don't want to light a candle, you can use the candle warmers, the wax melts, listening to your favorite music. Drinking water, that is one of the biggest things that I have worked to change myself. Is I am habitually a non-water drinker. Like, I love water, that's primarily what I want to drink. But if I don't think about it, I don't drink enough of it. And so I've heard these sayings, such as finding a really fun water bottle, like, or cup. I love a 40-ounce cup because then I only have to fill them up a couple times. Putting stickers on there, flavorings. That's a really big thing that's going around right now, is using like little sugar packs to flavor your water to get you to drink. It's a really great for your body in more than one way. And it only, you probably couldn't chug 40 ounces in 5 minutes, but maybe. Making your bed, eating a snack, doodling, again, writing affirmations, making plans, having a cup of tea, hanging out with friends. Again, these are things that you can do in just 5 minutes of time between classes, when you're studying, that can help you to be increase that battery level and increase and recharge. And I often like to mention things that parents or support systems can also do for those around them. Because I know we may, yes, just have first-year students in here, but we may have support systems that are joining us as well. So the first thing is to check in frequently and openly. Asking those questions, checking in frequently on your students, your friends, your partners, just to make sure that they're doing okay. And having those deeper conversations. Don't be afraid to speak up. This is the number one thing. If you feel that someone is experiencing a lower battery or is experiencing a moment of crisis, please do not be afraid to speak up to them or to the safety networks around the students. So their residence hall, their advisor, anybody that they're interacting with, to get them the support that they need. Support your student and the changes that they may experience. The students are going to go from being potentially at home all of the time with a great support system around them to being on campus and not maybe knowing a lot of people, maybe for the first time experiencing moments in class where they're not doing as well, getting a bad score on a test or a paper. I can remember those moments myself. You think you're doing really well, and then you get hit with a not so great grade, or you just have a hard time getting a subject or something that you're studying, and those can be really difficult. And so being able to have a support system around you that helps you to get through those is going to be super important. Encourage your student to engage on campus, whether that's clubs, going to basketball games, getting out into the community in which they're living. because it may be a new community. It's also extremely important to make friends, but then again, get that opportunity to increase that social battery and be able to talk to others around them. And then I always suggest and go back to emphasizing any traditional practices you have. So for us here as Coast Salish people, going to the water is an extremely important practice for us. Going out and maybe harvesting nettles or cedar or other practices such as song and dance and powwow and other smokehouse and other things, other traditional practices that are in your community that you have maybe used in your family or in your traditions as well. I think it's also important to talk about being, for us as students, being mindful. And this is called the mindfulness technique. And so it's an opportunity to think about negative self-talk and to realize that negative self-talk is a fleeting passing moment. And so you can ask yourself these 3 questions to help yourself move past that negative thought. So what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? And what can I do next to help myself? One of the biggest things that I also remind myself, and like I said, I have positive affirmations for myself. It's actually hanging right above this computer, and it says, "Thoughts are not facts." So when I would find myself having a negative self-talk moment, I would remind myself that thoughts are not facts. It's going to come into my brain, and I can choose whether or not I hold on to that thought or I let that thought pass and move forward. And some thoughts to keep in mind. Being imperfect is something that we all share. So we are not perfect human beings. We are going through learning experiences. And it's these learning experiences that help make us stronger, that we can then work to teach others as well. We have emotions that feel good and ones that are uncomfortable. And it will take time to learn how to be patient with ourselves. Um, I really want to encourage students, especially as you're going into your first year of school, or maybe you are in your first year, be patient with yourself. There's going to be easy moments and there's going to be difficult moments. And the difficult moments hopefully don't come so quickly and swiftly. But it's important to remember to be patient with yourself and remember that you're learning in a new system. And you are learning how to be a student, you're learning how to potentially be on your own for the first time, and you're trying to learn what supports exist inside of the college that you are studying at. Is there tutoring hours? Is there mental health services? What are those different supports that exist inside of your space? And last but certainly not least is that we all deserve kindness, both for ourselves and for others. So remember to be kind for yourself. And then I just wanted to provide a list of resources as I've gone throughout the years in teaching my first year students self-care. There is things such as advice from the aunties. We Are Native has a very large self-care campaign. There is a few videos. One of them is called The Missing Ingredient in Self-Care by Portia Jackson. Why Self-Care Isn't Selfish by Jessica Brubaker. Retraining Your Brain with Self-Care. And then there's also, again, just those national resources. So the Suicide Prevention Hotline and the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. And then this one is my favorite, and I actually tried this. It's called Caring Text Messages. So you can text the word college to 65664, and you actually get caring text messages sent to you anytime that you need them. So whatever you are going through, it's really cool to be able to do that. And then also American Indian College Fund also has a lot of great self-care resources on their website as well. And really that was the majority of things I had for self-care. So I did just want to share my name, my email, my phone number if you need it. If you have questions, I'm more than happy to connect on LinkedIn or other social media profiles as well. And really just continue to remind you to take it easy on yourself for your first year. There's going to be so many different changes that you're going to experience. Live in each one of those changes, live in each one of those moments because you don't get them back again, which is the key part of all of this as well. But there's a lot of time and space for you to try new things and to try to grow throughout yourself as well. So if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to come off mute or drop them in the chat. And I'm happy to answer them before I pass it back over to Sean.
Thank you again. That was really insightful. We definitely appreciate for take some time on this Tuesday on the summer afternoon to spend some time with us and go over some of the great material.